Welcome to Gemcast Live. In today's episode, we have a new reader, Butler, who will be reading from Rowan Hearth's story. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. Without further ado, here is our writer, Rowan Hearth, to introduce the story.
Hey, great to be here. Uh, the story is part of a young adult epic fantasy series called Mist World. And so this chapter that we're going to be reading is in book three. For some background, the world here is one where magic is effectively running out, and there is a mutative mist that covers the surface of the world. So we only have two civilizations left of humans. There's Giova, who lives underground, and there's Zephyria, who live in cities in the sky. But with magic running out, the ability to push back the mist is also starting to fail. The contents of book one involve finding out what the mist actually is and finding a means to push it back and discovering that it is actually necromantic miasma. And so you have to create the opposite of necromancy. So the second book involved further exploring the surface of the world after creating that necessary opposite, and then discovering more about how things came to be. Book three involved finding out even more, encountering some of the legacy civilizations that previously existed, dwarves, dragonkin. If you're thinking D&D, you're getting pretty close. So, but but at the beginning of this chapter, my main character, Marin, she has discovered the that the elders of her society, the Giovans, have betrayed her very, very hard. And so she has just gotten off the stage of a battleground on the floor of the Elders Council, where she just finished killing Donovan, one of the elders. However, the people that Donovan was working with are still there, and she is asking for accountability.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. That's a great way to set us up. So here is our reader for today, Miss Butler, and without further ado, we move on to the chapter.
All right, here we go. Enough, Struth said, visibly slumping and lowering his hand. Whoop, actually, before I get started, should I share my screen?
If you can maintain sharing the screen and scrolling down as you read, that would be preferable if you can.
Sure, I can do that. There we go.
Awesome.
All right, starting over. Enough, Struth said, visibly slumping and lowering his hand. You've made your point. We can't kill you. Even at our best, even with a surprise attack. There's no point in trying anymore. Just get it over with. The others visibly gave up as he spoke, also dropping their hands. They bowed their heads, waiting for the inevitable. Mayron froze. She hadn't wanted this. She had wanted them on the verge of breaking, to see what they'd done. No, more than that. She'd wanted. The world tilted, and color faded from Mayron's sight as cruel truth made itself known to her. She wanted them to hurt as she'd hurt, to bleed as she'd bled, to fight as she'd fought, to despair as she had. She'd wanted them to feel what she'd felt and recognize her through it, to know in every fiber of their being what they'd done to a girl who'd given everything to save this wretched world. She wanted them to take all of that and give her what she needed: accountability. Not submission to her just because she was stronger, but real, true accountability. The kind where you take ownership of your actions and face the consequences with dignity. The kind where you defend yourself and fight for the future you want to see. So this abject surrender of their future? Unacceptable. They still didn't get it. Worse, they were forcing Mayrin to lay judgment on them while they were unresisting, while they made themselves out to be the victims. Victims of her fury when they'd done the unforgivable to her and her parents. It was utterly infuriating beyond anything Mayrin had ever known. Her eyes dilated, her fists clenched. Her blood felt like it was both ice cold and boiling. No, no, you don't get to give up, she snarled. You don't get to do this. You don't get to make me kill you in cold blood. You don't get to make me like you. Mayrin, Alric trailed off, unconsciously reaching out to her. Shut up, Alric, Mayrin yelled, as more mist blasted around her. It coiled and writhed under her fury, rising up to her ankles and giving off an ominous, ethereal blue glow. They don't get to pick the easy way out. They don't get to just lie down and die like some victim. She stalked over to Struth and grabbed him by the hair, forcing him to look at her. Come on, I'm right here. Try to kill me again. She seized his hand and slammed it against her chest, right over her heart. Do it! Do it, damn you! The silent resignation in Struth's eyes sickened her, and she used her grip on his wrist to throw him halfway across the room, sending him tumbling. Her eyes locked on Lawrence, who hadn't spoken a word so far. He tried to back away, eyes wide, but Mayrin grabbed him by the neck and brought his face within inches of her own. You look like a courageous sort. He absolutely didn't, with the utter terror in his eyes, but she could just imagine him at a table, cold-heartedly agreeing that it was time for her parents to die. Lawrence's pulse beat a panicked drumbeat against her fingers as she dragged him even closer. Come on. You tried to kill me before. Try to finish the job. You can do it. I can't, Lawrence whispered. Mayrin felt her face twist into an ugly snarl. And why not? Because we were wrong, he stuttered. You've made that really clear. So what? Mayrin hissed. What does being right or wrong change? You represent the nation of Jehovah. You have a responsibility to do your best by your people. Donovan's whole argument was that the order was more important than morals, and you believed him. You sent my parents to die for no other reason than it would deprive me of support, because you believed the world would be better if I died. So prove it. Kill me, she scoffed darkly. Or try, at least. But it's impossible, Lawrence whimpered. Useless, Mayrin roared, throwing him to crash on the floor next to Struth, who was only just beginning to rise. She cast her gaze at the rest of the traitors and found not a single one who would meet her eyes. Each and every one of them looked down and away, shame and resignation etched on their faces. Not even a single spark of resistance. Mayrin's nails dug painfully into her palms, drawing blood as her heart pounded in aching, furious rebellion. All of you, cowards! You have the slimmest chance for survival, and you're not going to take it? You useless, abyssing, rotting wastes of my air! You pyrite-blooded excuses for human beings! She latched onto Gerald's arm and broke it with the barest effort, hearing him scream as she launched him at Struth's feet. Come on! Mayrin demanded breathlessly. You committed to sending my parents to die alone in a country not their own. To letting me die alone, trapped in the prison you turned my home into. Look me in the eyes. Find the ruthlessness that let you condemn the girl who saved your worthless lives. You want me dead? This is your chance. Fight me! No one looked up. None of them so much as moved a finger towards their weapons, or channeled the barest hint of magic. They just stood there, passive, waiting for her to kill them and end this. Mayrin started breathing faster, heavier as they utterly denied her the satisfaction. "Look at me!" she screamed, so powerfully that it scraped her throat. "Is your resolve so weak that you can't bear looking at the consequences of your actions? I've had to stare into the abyss ever since I fought the Ninth Legion, lived with the nightmares of the moment I raised my comrades as undead." She stood there, chest heaving as she scooped out her pain and threw it at them like daggers. "I may have committed a cardinal sin, but I never once looked away. I owned what I've done. My sin is mine." The room was silent as Mayrin fixed the foulest, darkest glare she had on the objects of her ire. At the utter cowards who wouldn't even meet her halfway to give her even the smallest semblance of justice. "So do me the depths-forsaken courtesy of doing the same thing, damn you," she whispered, the mist at her feet going still, almost placid as she tried one last time to reach them. "Acknowledge what you did. Look in the eyes of the girl you tried to kill for the sin of being better than you. Own it." She released a long, shaky breath. Then abyssing, "Fight me. You owe me that much." If anything, her words demoralized them even further, judging from the profound slump in their shoulders and the clenched shut eyes. Struth even started crying soundless tears, and Lawrence bowed his head further. Patricia's pained whimpering fell completely silent, and Gerald slumped resignedly over his broken arm. But not one of them made a move. "How dare you?" Mayrin's whole body trembled with anger as her fury hit a new peak. "How dare you claim to lead our people? How dare you claim that a sacrifice is needed and then refuse to look her in the eyes? It doesn't matter if you were wrong or if you were right. You made a decision. A leader's duty is to accept the consequences of what they do. You don't get to wash your hands of it." Her fists clenched tight, droplets of blood staining the tips of her fingers. "Stand by what you did or make amends. That's all you can do. That's all anyone can do. The path either way is the same. Look at me. Fight me. Try to prove you were right, or give me satisfaction." She let out a shuddering breath, making one final plea for justice. "Donovan fought till the end for his beliefs. Why can't you? Don't you owe it to the both of us to try?" For a long moment, nobody moved. But just as Mayrin was beginning to give up on ever getting a response, Patricia spoke. "We were just afraid," she whispered, hand reaching for but never quite touching the icy spike in her shoulder as blood slowly dripped down it. "Afraid of everything coming down around us. Afraid of the country destabilizing. Afraid of your growing power and influence. Afraid that, in your incomplete understanding of how the world works, you'd bring another calamity upon us." "Look how you already brought the undead legions upon us once," Lawrence murmured, though the words sounded like a whip crack in the otherwise silent chamber. "We don't need another nameless plague. We can't have another hero bring ruin to us all. We just can't." Gerald cradled his arm gingerly, but his head slowly lifted. His eyes raised from the ground to Mayrin's boots, then swept up past her waist. They flicked up, just once, to meet her face, before instantly falling back down to her hips once more. Mayron's teeth clenched as she realized that he truly did not have the courage to meet her gaze. Disgust filled her. This was one of the leaders of their nation? One of the bitter truths of this world, Gerald spoke softly, is that it runs on power, not justice. I didn't want you or your parents to die, truly. He sighed bitterly. I thought it just an unfortunate cost. Because the moment people realize that you're not different from them, that they can achieve enough power to force the world to change, then we fall into chaos as everyone tries to enforce their own views. But it's too late. You've already gained the power to force us to bend the knee, Struth finished quietly. He finally lifted his gaze to Mayron's eyes, and her stomach roiled at the resignation lying within them. Those with power make the rules. You've already won, Mayron Divert. I hope the future you make is worth it. But I won't fight you. All I do is die tired, and I'd rather face my end with dignity. Do what you have to do. The silence stretched, and Mayron slowly came to accept that these people really wouldn't give her the justice she craved. Something in her chest curled in on itself and died as reality settled upon her. She didn't know what. Hope, maybe? Mayron took a long, deep breath. Her fury, which had burned so hot, collapsed inward, leaving her insides filled with a cold so radiant it was surprising that her breath wasn't frosting the air. A terrible calm settled over her, and she felt something in her face and stance shift, closing off. The crystal clear line shone ever so bright, ever so dark, unrelenting, ruthless. No, more than that. Inexorable, inevitable. Of course, this was the only way it could have ended, and she was a fool for ever hoping for more. Fine, she said with heavy finality. Fine. If you won't fight me, you'll fight Donovan. Mayron turned her eyes to the corpse she'd laid aside and began to walk over to it. Sickly black and gray mana wove itself at her fingertips, and the mist swelled as she prepared to cast the spell that had broken her before, as she prepared to raise undead. Your lack of fortitude and inability to take ownership of your actions. It disgusts me, Mayron declared ominously. So I'll make you take a walk in my shoes. You'll fight the undead you indirectly created, or let it kill you. Live with the horror of what you did, or die. Her voice lowered into a harsh whisper. Just like me. No, please, no, Patricia begged. And within seconds, the others were all clamoring, pleading for her to stop, to have mercy. Mayron ignored them all. They'd refused her justice, so now they'd face their own. Either they'd fight and kill Donovan, turning their back on their previous behavior, or he would kill them, and they'd reap the consequences of their choices. She stood over Donovan's body, and for a split second, she was back at the battleground again, looking down at the body of the first man she'd done the unforgivable to. Here she was, about to do it again. And this time, she didn't have the cold, bitter comfort of necessity. So be it. She didn't care anymore. Don't do this, Patricia screamed, her voice raw with desperation. If there's any mercy in you at all, please don't. Don't turn Donovan into an undead. Don't make us fight him, please. Mayron looked back at the woman, whose face had gone chalk white with fear. Mercy is given to the merciful. You had none for me. I have none for you. Fight or die. Those are the only options you have. It was disgusting. After all that begging, she still didn't understand what Mayron had spelled out. None of them did. But Mayron had given up on making them see her. This was the closest she'd get to satisfaction. With that, she knelt into the rising mist, hand reaching out to touch Donovan's chest with the forbidden spell. She was interrupted when the doors abruptly exploded into splinters of wood, and she quickly rose to her feet, unspeakably enraged at being denied again. Her rage, however, sputtered out as she saw Jacob, shield in hand and sword at his hip, eyes wide in alarm. Mayron!
I can't hear anything right now. Can anybody hear anything?
That was the end of the chapter.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's better if yeah, because I was trying to follow along, but the text was like
Sorry, I
really
was
small.
taking a drink of water. Sorry about that.
No, like yo, like you read with so much expression. Like
Very much.
between
Thank you.
yeah, between the way it was written and the way it was read, like there were like emotions stirring, like for real. Like that was so tense. You guys did such a good job with that.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to read. Rowan did such a good job with this chapter.
Thank you. You definitely did it justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, like that was that what stood out for me. Like it was like yeah, I was impressed. So we have one question already. Battle Sloth said, like you mentioned that this is a YA series. What inspired you to write YA, Rowan?
Okay, so funny story. So when I was first getting started, uh, there was a question that was posed to me about how writers can write compelling characters, and my argument was that in order to have a compelling character, you need to have a compelling world that they came from, because you have to grow that character from there. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And so they asked for an example, and so I threw something together. And so I was going, all right, so let's go ahead and let's pick a genre. Let's go fantasy. Why not? Okay, we need to create a conflict. Let's go. Mana's running out. And so I step by step built the world, built the character for this world as a proof of concept. And then when I looked back at what I had written, I was like, ah, blight. I'm gonna have to write this, aren't I?
It's like no, it came across as like rock solid, and like it really flowed too. I don't know why, but like I had like a bit of like like it sounds like a kind of like a Royal Road thing in the sense that like you could almost see like the anime influence. Like, am I off completely? Like you know how like in anime sometimes there's like that long showdown like intense
Oh yeah,
moments, and it
for
kind of
sure.
felt like yeah, like she was really going in on the audience, and it was like that epic scene in like some anime that like has that got led up to, and like you know she was like really undressing them all one by one with like her declarations. I thought it was great.
Thank you. I am a big fan of anime, and I cannot deny that some of this might have been influenced by it, but I don't remember it consciously. But yes, when I was writing the scene, I really wanted to convey the specific point of the despair event horizon, where she goes, "I want justice to no, I'm done. I'm done, and I don't care anymore." And the only way to make that come across well is to repeatedly beg for what you need and have it denied.
Okay. Butler, like you have not read before, to my understanding, like at least here. Um, yeah, that was amazing for somebody who hasn't done that before. Like it was very impressive to me.
Thank you. I really enjoyed reading it. It was so fun. Got to dust off my acting chops that I haven't gotten to in ages. So that was a blast.
So, Rowan, like you kind of described how you like how this was like a proof of concept and it kind of came from that. Like where else did inspiration come from with regard to like where the ideas came from and how you ultimately chose to like write and like keep this story going?
Okay, so when the the original proof of concept was that well, I just mentioned it, but yes, the whole the mutated mist, mana vanishing from the world. But in order to figure out a lot of the other stuff, I actually drew on some childhood experiences with Final Fantasy IX, because there was the mist in that game if you played the game, and and it very clearly was one of the big driving elements. But I also drew inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons because I wanted there to be a D&D-esque world, but with where you had but with a slightly different magic system. So you could see that there were influences from a bunch of different places, so it wasn't entirely predictable, but it was something that really wanted that took lots of bits from from places that people would have enjoyed from their childhoods. So like I said, Final Fantasy IX, Dungeons and Dragons. There was some stuff there. Once upon a time, there was stuff I did with. Jeez, there's a word. Okay, yes, and I also did some there are also airships in this world, and I wanted to include some of the steampunk influence from my reading. And one of the inspirations I had for the Flying Cities came from the Animorphs series. So I've got lots of different things from all sorts of places.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that, and it also definitely seems like it's your voice too. Like there's not like a shadow of a doubt of like AI influence, for example. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like it was clearly like a voice that had been like developed over time, and it definitely came off that way. That you had taken your inspiration and like put it in a cauldron of sorts, and like this was the final product, which came out. So that was pretty impressive. Turley's
Yep.
going on typing. Like hopefully this is something that okay, question. Awesome. Came in late as well and had enough time to get some exposure. Your character dialogue really jumped out at me. Where did it come from? You yourself, consciousness stream, like yeah, where would you say what can you say about your dialogue?
Okay. So dialogue is something that I've been practicing for many years. I didn't. So I cut my teeth on fan fiction back in the day, and I've always been of the opinion that any good story must be character driven, because if you try to force a character to fit a plot, it doesn't work. But if you make the plot around the character, then you cook it. And so, but when you're dealing with a character driven story, you have to deal with character interactions. So dialogue is arguably one of the most important parts of that. You have to be able to demonstrate something akin to real life conversation. So you need to show that with a combination of body language without overly describing it, along with the right action verbs to say, "Hey, snarled, whispered, hissed." You have to find the right word to express meaning without going over the top. And it's taken me years to figure this stuff out.
Actually,
But
like, appreciate that you say that without going over the top because, one of, like, my pet peeves in, like, reading and also, like, getting feedback from beta readers or whatever, um, people tend to want the beta readers at least, they tend to want you to beat them over the head with, like, what the character is thinking more than, like, readers actually tend to, I've noticed. But with YA, it's like, I think it's harder because, like, I don't really have to, describe too much thought. I could be, like, kinda more subtle and along the lines of what you're describing if you write, like, adult fiction. But, like, with YA, you do have to give them, something to go by. Because so I like how you kind of like walk that middle path to like you don't want to be too descriptive. You want to use like the right word to convey what you want, but at the same time, like even though you're writing YA, it definitely serves enough to like give a younger audience something to sink their teeth into.
mhm. I mean, that was what I really wanted to do when I was writing this, because when I was a teenager, I was head over heels in love with Anne McCaffrey stuff, the Dragon Riders of Pern series, because even though even though that series was written for young adults, and I was just like 12 or 13 at the time, I was so immersed, and I wanted to find that nice balance where anybody of a given maturity level could enjoy it.
Yeah, well, it definitely came across that way. Like it came across as a professional effort. Um, and I think the comment by Caballo was awesome. Like I totally agree that the reading was a boost to the writing. But like let's get one more question in. Lucia asks, did the characters come first or did the world building like happen first? Like what like you
The
said?
world first. The
Okay.
world had to come first, because any character that you make has to fit within the world. And you have to see how they came to be. Because if you create the character first and then create the world that they grew up in, there's a disconnect, because the individual is a product of their surroundings and the people that they grew up with. So the world has to come first, because you have to have the driving elements. What got them to that point?
I think that might make sense. Like, and I think it along the lines of everything else you've shared. I think it shows like this thoughtful approach that you have in your story, and like that's why I think that definitely contributes to why it reads like so cohesive, and like it reads like like a professional effort. So, yeah, thanks for the story. It was great to listen to. Anything Butler before we're done? Like anything from you? Like it was a really wonderful effort.
Thank you. Just thanks for the opportunity to read for all of you guys and for the opportunity to read such a fun chapter. That was awesome to read.
Yeah, we'll definitely be asking you to read again. I mean, you got to read your own story coming up, not too distant future. But anyways, thanks everyone for coming out. A wonderful story written and read. I hope you guys will come out soon for the next Gemcast. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.